Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Tuesday, August 5th, 2025, and trade is digital. Carbon is trade. Mark Carney is trying to sell us on his amazing diplomacy skills, negotiation skills. And really, what he did was negotiated with Europe to set Europe up to make a trade deal while Canada stood there waiting for Europe to turn their back on the United States and really start with this whole realignment thing, which never happened. But in June 2025, Carney really thought that was going to happen, I think. And I'll show you that video. It's very interesting. We'll be starting talking about trade after we look at robot dogs with things on their back. Not guns on their head, not yet, but I'm sure it's coming. More staff than inmates? Yes. Canada's prison system is as ridiculous as you would expect with things like more staff than inmates, because why not? We've got to pay these people to be here with the people that we're paying to have housed here for your safety, comrade, right? Obviously. It's ridiculous and not surprising because Canada has become a clown country. AI created mRNA vaccines for cancer. This feels like sci-fi, but they're selling this to us hard. And then they'll say, I don't know why everybody's dying of random disease ABC. They'll claim ignorance while running a program that causes harm. And we've already got proof of that in what's happening with the COVID rollout still. Trump halts disaster relief if a state is boycotting Israel. Isn't that strange? Isn't that a weird thing? And Carney's silence on the biggest trade headwinds ever in Canada speaks volumes. So there's a radio host from, I'm not sure, in Ontario anyway, and he's talking about Carney and he's upset with how Mark Carney is not dealing with this. There hasn't been any kind of response at all from Mark Carney. So, man, it is wild and crazy times, and there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got this robot dog with the power to run through glass, like plate glass windows. And I don't know why, but this is a selling feature that is highlighted early in the video. Here's Unitree A2's Stellar Hunter dog robot thing. Here we go. It's got a backpack on its back in this part of the video, but at the beginning, it runs clear through plate glass window. Here we go. The dog is dancing around. It's ridiculous. And I mean, the rock music, big selling feature, obviously. And the crashing through a plate glass window, I don't know exactly why that's important, but it seemed really important to start the video with. Slow-mo. Okay, so trade. We don't have a trade deal. People are upset. This is what Mark Carney was basing all of the trade negotiations on, realignment with EU. And this is during the, I guess it's, I don't know, the Canada EU conference in June 2025. And Carney's standing in front of this, making announcements saying, yeah, we're gonna trade with countries that, you know, believe in the values we believe in, blah, 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 blah. And the United States doesn't believe in our values, the same values that we believe in. Our Canadian values, or what kind of values again, Mr. Carney? Here we go.
It's assured. But what we're going to do, irrespective of the outcome, is we are going to build trading relationships with like-minded partners, reliable partners, partners that are aligned with our values. It begins here, and you see the ambition in this partnership, and the scope of ambition, and that's the future of trade. That's the future of trade. The future of trade is digital. The future of trade does take carbon into account. Carbon is trade, right?
Carbon is trade.
The future of trade, it does have this defense cooperation. It is consistent with industrial policy, recognizing that industrial policy amongst allies, we're all going to NATO, but only some of us in NATO are talking about an allied industrial policy that will make us.
Some people in NATO pay for NATO, and other countries like Canada don't.
Stronger.
So
that's weird. The future of trade. Not a narrow discussion.
Go to NATO. What a lunatic. So Mark Carney is hoping to align with all of those NATO countries and align closer with people who want to have carbon part of trade and digital part of trade. But he doesn't actually want to talk to trade. He's in the face of the biggest trade situation in Mark Carney's tenure anyway, Mark Carney decided to go to Pride instead. He's not working the phones. He's not calling to replace the United States as a trade partner or anything like that. He's going and doing a public show. Here's this broadcaster, CCFR, says an Ontario man says somebody says he's a broadcaster out of, that's Brady. He does the morning show on AM 640 in Montreux. So, okay, there you go. That's Brady. So he's a radio guy, and an Ontario man says he and another Canadian workers want answers after Trump increased tariffs to 35%. But for 4 days, Mark Carney hasn't said or done anything. Yeah, people are noticing, and not just people who like Canadian politics like me and the dozens of us who watch the show. Other people too. Here's this guy.
So what are we at, 4 full days?
It has been 1 day since the last too fast speed incident.
The United States put these tariffs on the country of Canada. Automobile industry, steel industry, aluminum industry, and there's ripple effects all over the place. I'm in Ajax, it's right next to Oshawa, and there's noise about it. People are talking about it, and they like answers. And we're talking about important jobs in Windsor and up in Sault Ste. Marie, Hamilton. It's Canada's Steel City, right? It's Canada's Pittsburgh. And nobody said anything. We've gone through a long weekend, in Ontario at least. This decision was last Thursday night, leading into August 1st, which is Friday. And yet, what do we hear from Prime Minister Mark Carney? Nothing. Crickets. Silence. He asked for this job. No one pushed him into it. He begged for it. He said to Canadians, I've got the experience. I've got the global connections. I've got the economic foresight to lead us through uncertain times. He said he'd stand tall on the world stage. You heard from him? Seen him? Anything? Nothing? And now the biggest trade challenge of his brief tenure is now. We're in the middle of it. And zero. He gave everybody a coupon to cross a bridge in Prince Edward Island. He walked in the Pride Parade in Vancouver. I had no problem with either of those things if you can handle the big issues. So where's the emergency press conference? Where's the reassurance to all the workers across the country that their jobs are going to be okay? They're not feeling that way right now. They're feeling tremendous stress. It's creating a lot of ripple effect, like we said, and we'll see it in terms of spending across this country. Tariffs like these aren't abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. They affect real people in real jobs in real Canadian towns. And as for all the Liberal MPs, such as the one where I live and the one where you might live, zero, nothing. Summer vacation is in full flight. Again, Prime Minister Carney is a man of some esteem, and he asked for this, he wanted the responsibility, the global spotlight. Well, the spotlight is on you, or at least it should be, sir, and you should be somewhere. This is a moment for leadership, not silence. And sometimes, you know what silence says? You know what it does? It speaks volumes.
Right? So Carney not being able to meet the moment, and make no mistake, he has not been able to meet the moment. He hasn't even tried. Speaks volumes about his ability, about the fact that we were sold a story that isn't true. Eric says it's really funny watching Canadian leadership playing hardball with America when we have no leverage at all. 75% of Canada's exports go to the United States. American corporations are the largest employers in Canada, next to the government. Canada has everything to lose and nothing to gain, and our politicians keep poking our best friend in the eye. And it seems weird, right? It seems a very, very strange thing to do. Rod says, breaking, President Trump just hit Switzerland with a 39% tariff. The Swiss are panicking. Their government is holding emergency meetings. CEOs are begging for mercy. Here's why it matters and why it's working. So in Switzerland, something happened and they responded. In Canada, something happened. Trump said, I'm going to tax you 35% starting August 1st. And nothing happened. Carney didn't convene the cabinet. He didn't even come back from vacation. He came back on the 23rd, met with the premiers, didn't do anything, waited until the 30th to convene his cabinet, and then got nothing, got bubkiss. Didn't even have a meeting with Trump before the clock ran out. He didn't even want one because he wasn't going to put on the table what needed to be put on the table. Supply management. Trump's been talking about this for years. I'm a schmo in my garage and I know what Trump wants. And Mark Carney doesn't. He's the smartest man in the room, don't you know? Smartest banking man in the room. Give me a break, right? Somebody's telling him what to say because apparently he's very socially awkward. We'll get to that in a minute. But here's what Trump's doing. He's putting pressure on countries to come in and invest in the United States. And if they invest in the United States, then he'll allow them to access the market, which is what the businesses want. Because without access to that market, the business is not viable. They can't sell to Switzerland. There's not enough volume. Can't sell to Canada. Not enough volume. Okay. Rod continues. The tariffs were no accident. Switzerland ran a $38.5 billion trade surplus with the United States last year. That's more than Mexico. Trump made it clear if you want free access to America's market, you don't get to take and never give. Switzerland now faces one of the highest tariff rates in the world, tied only with Syria, Burma, and Laos. The EU got 15%. The UK negotiated 10%. Switzerland, 39%. Why? Because they didn't come to the table. They thought that they were above all that. Trump didn't slam the door. He left it open. Tariffs were announced on August 1st, but they didn't take full effect until August 7th. That's not a coincidence. It's a negotiation tactic, and the Swiss got the message. Within hours, Switzerland's government called a special emergency session. They're offering to buy U.S. LNG, invest more in American manufacturing, and even send top officials to Washington this week to cut a deal. About time. Fair's fair. Swiss stock markets tanked. Luxury brands like Carrier, IWC, Longnise, and Omega all fell 3 to 5% on fears of losing access to their number one export market, the USA. This isn't just pressure, it's leverage. As Trump says, tariffs are not a tool, not a punishment. He's forcing allies and rivals alike to the table with American jobs, energy, and investment as the deal. And so far, it's working. Don't listen to the critics. Trump's 39% tariff is a message. America is open for business, but not as a doormat. Deal fair or deal with the consequences. The Swiss can have a better deal. They could have had a much better deal 90 days ago. Ask Iran. If you enjoyed this content, blah, 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 blah. Here's Mark Carney, and apparently Amy Ham has interacted with Mark Carney. And she says, if you interact with Mark Carney in person, I have, you quickly realize that he's very socially awkward. I think he has limited to no ability to think on his feet and avoid ridiculous photo ops. It was actually painful watching him attempt to make small talk with the public. And so here he is again, making a fool of himself, or an ass of himself, as I said yesterday, taking a picture with a guy wearing a dog face mask thing. And it's the Vancouver Pride thing. So this is on brand for the Liberals, but still ridiculous. And Mark Carney doesn't have the acumen, the political acumen, to see how this is potentially bad. He didn't see the pictures with Jagmeet Singh and the two guys wearing the dog mask things. I don't know, man. The whole thing, Mark Carney, they keep telling us is the smartest guy in the room, and there's just no way that's true. There just isn't. Holly Doan says, maybe he knows finances, right? I know other things, but I should have got into finances. Darn me. Anyway, Holly Doan says, federal prison system with 20,000 staff has more employees than inmates. I think that maybe our federal government should have gotten into like maths more than social sciences, because that just doesn't math, right? Oh yeah, we pay all these people and we pay for all these people to be here. More staff than employees than inmates, according to these figures, follows findings by correctional investigator that Canada with $3.9 billion in annual budget has one of the costliest prison systems in the world. I'm shocked. I mean, I'm not that shocked, but I'm shocked. Melissa says Ontario awarded a massive contract, $140 million, to a U.S.-owned company for the Peter Gilligan Mississauga hospital. And now people want that contract ripped up like Ford did with Starlink. Build, baby, build. So City News is reporting industry group urges Ford to cancel $140 million contract awarded to a U.S. firm. And the Starlink thing is all politics. And it doesn't have a lot of... It's not a good business move, in my opinion. And here's Somalia benefiting from Starlink, where rural Canadians can't, because Doug Ford, or rural Ontarians can't necessarily, because Doug Ford is ripping up the contracts. Now, I think you can become a Starlink customer independent of Doug Ford's deal, right? Like you could access that service. It's all a very, very strange situation. I don't think any service has been delivered. There was an agreement, then there was an agreement, then the agreement was back on, and now the agreement's ripped up, and Bell and Rogers are going to get this big giveaway. And still, the people who are suffering without high-speed internet don't get any reprieve from this, right? I guess they could get Starlink if they wanted to. But it's still kind of frustrating if the government is actually trying to solve a problem, how terrible they are at it, right? Here's Dacey Media. He says Somali pirates can now have high-speed internet, but rural Ontarians can't. Starlink's high-speed, low-latency internet is now available in Somalia. So there you go. Starlink, Somalia. Yay, Starlink. Here's Pierre Poilievre being asked, why shouldn't the West separate? And I don't think that his answer is 3 minutes and 46 seconds, and at least he's answering the question. So there's that. But I think it's a pretty weak answer overall. I wasn't convinced. I listened to all 3 minutes. We'll just listen to the first minute or so. I wasn't convinced. All the things that he listed weren't convincing to me, right? One of the things he says is that after Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the West wanted to separate too. And then we had, 1984 to 2015, we built the oil sands. This is the whole thing. Anyway, here we go.
What would you say to someone like me who was a young family and seeing more hope in the idea of the landlocked Western Canada than a never-ending Liberal government? The Liberal government owns the media, they run the universities, they have no shame or integrity. It feels like the game is rigged and that the East will always decide their fate. Why should Alberta and Saskatchewan stay?
That's a fair question. A very fair question. I frankly understand the frustration that people feel. The Liberals in Ottawa have told the West to pay up and shut up. They've attacked Alberta and Saskatchewan's biggest industries of agriculture, oil and gas, to name a few. And they have transferred massive wealth out of this region. So all of those concerns are legitimate. The question is, how do we deal with it? I believe the answer is in building alliances with like-minded Canadians across the country. So for example, Alberta and Saskatchewan should lock arms with Newfoundland, which wants to repeal C-69 so that it can double its oil production. Newfoundland got off equalization by producing offshore oil. Now they want to do gas. We should lock arms with them to do that. You have the First Nations communities along with the British Columbia coast that want to build at least a half dozen LNG liquefaction plants to take Alberta's gas, liquefy it, put it on a ship, send it off to 2.5 billion customers in Asia, and get $14 for a million metric British thermal units instead of $3. That would bring home tens of billions of dollars of wealth for our people across the oil and gas regions of this country. We should team up with the people in the Greater Toronto area who want to see a massive crackdown on crime by toughening up the criminal justice system, because they're seeing the chaos.
I don't understand how teaming up with Newfoundland to repeal anti-pipeline bills is going to actually, in the short or medium term, solve any of the problems that are brought forward by the separatist movement. It doesn't seem like it's going to solve any of the problems. His ideas are not enough, not nearly close to enough. And it just doesn't make any sense to me. Mr. Sunshine Baby's audience is turning against Pierre Poilievre as well. He says you can only choose one. Pierre Poilievre got 33%, and Alberta-Saskatchewan separation got 66%. So isn't that interesting, right? Very, very interesting result in my opinion. Here is, yesterday I was reporting on the Muslim Brotherhood being able to fundraise and is described as a central hub in Ontario, Canada. And now there's more information. Apparently they're fundraising and they have a yearly income, and people are like well aware of this. And that seems like pretty crazy to me. Mr. Stark is saying data from the Canadian Revenue Agency audit and MENA Research Center analysis reveal a coordinated network with $15.3 million in donations and $6 million in government funding in 2023, suggesting deeper infiltration than in other Western countries. So it's interesting because Canada's worse off and described as a safe haven for Muslim Brotherhood, and that's not good news. That's bad. Contrarian says, so the Muslim Brotherhood in Canada can raise tons of cash and no questions asked. Meanwhile, truckers take donations and all heck breaks loose, and then it gets confiscated by the Liberals. What kind of country are we living in? You know what kind of country we're living in. Come on. David McGinty says a new shipment of Canadian humanitarian aid was delivered this morning to Palestinians in Gaza by the Canadian forces. Canada remains committed to getting life-saving aid to those impacted and will keep working with partners to support Gaza. So 100 million, or how much? $300 million. All of this money they're airdropping it. And this is, why are we so focused on foreign countries when our own country is being wholesale invaded? Nobody wants to talk about that. Our country, you can't get healthcare. We have kids dying in hospital rooms because they weren't seen by a doctor for 8 hours. And then when they were seen by a doctor, they got sent to another hospital instead of being treated. And we've got politicians saying, the important thing to fix here, we have to airdrop food to Gaza. And that seems weird. That seems like a strange thing to me. Globe Politics says Canada among 6 countries that airdropped humanitarian aid to Gaza. And the Bucky Will says, and it's stolen by Hamas. Yeah, okay. So it's useless to keep doing this, yet we keep doing it. And why do we keep doing it? You got me. I don't know. Ryan Garrettson says this is speech and free speech. The attack, our free speech rights are under attack everywhere. And propaganda is used to drown out people with sense. And Ryan is highlighting the propaganda. He says, how many times have you seen this article being pushed today? It's basically been hourly. This is government funded propaganda. So CTV News says Canada's economy is showing resiliency against the U.S. tariffs. Why? Because the USMCA is in effect, and we're able to continue to export most of our goods because a lot of our goods are covered under the USMCA. But make no mistake, we can feel real pain with these tariffs, and very quickly as well. It's not good. It's not good, but they're trying to make the case. The newspapers are all independently, Toronto Sun, Toronto Star, CP24, CTV, National Post, CBC News. They're all independently trying to make the case that everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Go back to sleep, y'all. Toronto Star says Canada's economy is showing resilience. Why? Canada's economy is showing resilience, says CP24. Why? Same thing in National Post and CBC. They didn't even change the headline. Lazy. Here is Liz Gunn, and this guy's saying they're changing Britain into China or North Korea with the internet being completely censored. Here we go.
This Online Safety Act, Orwellianly named, is plunging this country into a Chinese-style surveillance state. So there are two key things I want to flag inside the Act. Section 44, which allows the Secretary of State to unilaterally force Ofcom to change the rules about what needs to be censored and what doesn't, without an act of parliament, without a vote. So basically, it's a death knell of democracy in that respect. The second one is Section 179, which is even more insidious. What it does is make it illegal to say something that is false, that causes, and I quote, non-trivial psychological harm. And it's not just making that illegal, it is forcing social media companies to proactively censor that speech. And the penalties that are being imposed on these social media companies are things like 10% of global revenues and potentially criminal sanction for management. So what's that going to do, Ben? It's going to create an incentive structure for social media companies to over-censor, because that's the rational thing to do if you're trying to protect shareholder value. This Online Safety Act.
Pretty wild stuff, right? And it only gets worse from here. The speech rules, the crackdowns, the government saying we're going to solve this problem, but implementing speech laws instead. That's all getting worse, because as people demand a solution, the problem, reaction, solution thing, they already have the solution in mind. And the solution is central bank digital currency and digital IDs. And so the more you demand that they fix this, the more they say, yes, we've got a solution. Just tell us when. And so with that, we've got to say goodbye to the stream. We've got lots more show to go. If you want to check it out, go over to CanadaPoly.com or wherever else you get your podcasts, and you can probably get the full one. But for now, we've got to say goodbye. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you tomorrow. And we'll stop that, and we'll stop that. And for everybody else, we will continue to learn about how free speech is under attack in the West. Here is Alum, and he says Le Pen is banned from elections in France, plans to ban AfD in Germany, Romanian president election canceled by the judges, politicians arrested in Poland. This is happening everywhere. The global blob's soft power of legacy media has failed, so they're turning to hard power now. Brazil orders arrest of former president Bolsonaro. And so, yeah, that's what's going on, and they're realizing they're losing, and if they lose everything, then it's all been for naught, right? And so they're moving all assets to try and save their power. And it might just work. It really might. Michael Schellenberger is talking about the whole Brazilian thing. He says, hours after the release of the January 8 files, which shows illegal activity by Brazil's most powerful Supreme Court Justice, Alexander de Moraes,